So now we're live streaming as well. Hi, Martuhi. It's nice to have you.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I don't know if you already knew Christian Wandeler, Dr. Wandeler from the Craig School. I'm changing your schools for sure.
Hi, hi Christian. Hi, Dr. Wandeler.
Hello, Dr. Tonoy, and great to meet you. I'm actually at the Kremen School of Education and Human Development.
Oh, awesome. Good to know.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, Dr. Torren is with us at the Craig School of Business, so I got that one right. And she joined us a couple of years ago. Is that right?
Just a year ago.
A year ago. Yeah. So welcome. We haven't actually met in person, but soon.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
And I understand you're part of your research is on family business as well. Is that true? Or
partially.
Partially, yeah.
I haven't done research on family business yet, but I do research on entrepreneurship and innovation and stuff of that nature. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Wonderful news. Well, it's nice to meet you via Zoom as well. We have a couple of guests, and we're a little early right now. It's almost time. We're actually streaming via YouTube, and I'm gonna post a link on LinkedIn if you both are okay with that. So how is everything? How's the semester starting?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, or both, or everybody for that matter.
Exactly right. So just right. So I was very happy to see my students in person, and the classes have been going okay. And yeah, exciting, pretty exciting.
Wonderful to know.
Dr. Wanderer, how do you feel about teaching in person again?
Well, actually, one of my in-person classes got moved online, and the other classes were all online. So it was all right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you have an outbreak in your school, or why did that happen?
I don't know exactly why that decision was made, but it was just for this. We have a doctoral program in education leadership, and so the cohort has a back-to-back courses on Mondays. So they decided to move both of these courses online, and here we are.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. How about yourself? Do you teach a hybrid now, or?
No, in person, just in person. Last year I taught online, and now I'm teaching in person. No hybrid, just in person.
Okay. Okay. That's what I was kind of dreading a little bit. Have half the class at home and then the other half in the classroom, and now you got two groups that you got to juggle with. But,
right.
But it might be the future, right? People want to have some flexibility, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So I'm really curious what your thoughts are going to be in terms of entrepreneurship, and that's a big topic for me as well.
Yeah, I assume so. So maybe you, Fernando, and Christian, and perhaps Emil from the Lila Center, we could get together and have a conversation about entrepreneurship and family business and the future work organization, because maybe might be able to come up with a research idea or an idea for a grant that we might want to submit to an organization, but just to get to know each other.
That would be awesome.
Mhm.
I'm pretty flexible, so I'll defer to your schedule if that's okay.
Oh, sounds
I-
good.
So
Sounds like
let me
we're
know
all on the same page.
absolutely, be fun. So I've opened the actual Zoom for everybody to join. Those of us joining us today, welcome. And I'm just going to give another minute before other individuals are able to join us, and we should get started pretty soon. Dr. Wandeler, you have access to share the actual, and if you're using PowerPoints or anything else, I've given you rights to share your screen.
So let me start doing that thing.
So I want to say welcome, everyone. My name is Fernando Parra, and I have the pleasure of being, or serving, I should say, as a director of the Institute for Family Business, a resource center for family businesses where you all can get resources that are educational, that are responsive to the unique needs that family businesses face here in the Central Valley. And as part of our mission, we have partnered with Dr. Wandeler today to provide more information on how family businesses can be more human-centered in their human management. We are certainly very grateful to the IFB Advisory Board, our Dean, Julie Olson Buchanan, and all the other members of the IFB who have worked really diligently to make sure that these seminars are made available to the public. We appreciate your contributions as well. Let me go ahead and introduce a wonderful colleague and friend who is also an industrial and organizational psychologist, Dr. Christian Wandeler. He is a Fresno State Associate Professor and founder of the Senko Style Institute USA. Dr. Wandeler researches human potential development at the workplace and in education. He consults organizations to be more productive, innovative, and realize their potential, their individual and collective human potential. So if during this presentation, you have any questions, please feel free to just ask via the chat, talk to me, or just feel free to unmute and ask the questions, or I can redirect the questions if you just write them in Zoom. So let me yield the floor to our friend, Dr. Wandeler. Welcome. Thank
you very much, Dr. Parra. It's wonderful to be here. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for making time to be present this afternoon. I'm going to start sharing my slides. I typically do this session a little bit more interactively, but I know some of you are kind of splitting your attention between here and whatever else you may be working on. But like Dr. Parra said, if there are questions or comments, feel free to chime in, right? We want to make this as interactive as possible. And we're going to talk about human-centered management and how you can leverage this type of management to future-proof your organization. I want to tell you a little bit about myself here. I'm originally from Switzerland. I got here the first time around. I got here as an exchange student. I was an exchange student in the little town of Kerman, which some of you might know. I was in a high school exchange student, and that's where I met my future wife. And the original town where I'm from here is called Freiburg in Switzerland. It's a city that's bilingual. So if you see here this bridge, on the right side of this river is the German-speaking part of Switzerland. And on the left side over here is a French-speaking part. And actually in this old town here, in this old part of town, there's a mix between the languages. So there's a language called Bolz, which is a mix between French and German. So it's a really unique town. It's a great, it was a great place to grow up and learn the languages. I was also lucky to get this exchange student experience. Met my wife. She moved to Freiburg for 5 years, right? And I was doing my PhD studies I was working in Freiburg at the university and did PhD studies in Zurich. And then I got a scholarship to go to Stanford for a year, right? So my wife was very happy to go back to California, and that was in 2009. And initially it was 1 year, and you know, before you knew it, I had the great fortune to be accepted into the faculty at Fresno State, and the rest's been history. Right? I have now 3 little kids, a 10-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son, and also 3 Chihuahuas. So I really put roots down here in Fresno. I love this area, and you know, I really feel there's a lot of potential. And so I'm honored to anytime I get to talk to the broader community, I really appreciate that. So let me give you a quick overview so that you have a good idea what I plan to share with you guys today. The goal is for you all to get some insights and see what can you apply to your organization. And you know, I want to really stimulate your thinking around that to see what can we change, how can we be ready for the future. So we're talking about, you know, digital revolution, post-COVID, the challenges that we have right now. Then we want to look at what new role management can play. Talk a little bit about how you might consider redesigning the organization. And then I want to be real specific about remote teams. I think that's something that, particularly post-COVID, has become very relevant. And then we'll you know, kind of review what we talked about and really open it up for questions and have an interactive dialogue. So I wanted to say a few things about the Semco Style Institute. And this is really, I share a lot of insights that come from the Semco Style Institute. As a researcher and as a practitioner, I felt like the body of knowledge that they've developed is very practical and very applicable to many businesses, particularly family businesses. So if you as a family business, if you would see these types of results over 20 years, going from 90 to 5,000 employees, going from $4 million in revenue to $212 million, right? So I have an average growth rate of 47%. And all this while having a turnover of only 2%, right? So having a 98% retention rate. Would you want to know more about, hey, how did these results come about? And if you're interested, you know, you can ask me more questions, or also you can read these 2 books that Ricardo Semler wrote. Ricardo was a about 20-year-old young entrepreneur that took over the family business from his parents. And what he did is he took the corporate hierarchy of the family business and democratized the company, made it into a much flatter organization. And then he wrote 2 books about this journey, and he's got a TED Talk with over 3.5 million people watched. He's sold over 2 million books, and he has some of the most reprinted article in the Harvard Business Review, which is titled "Managing Without Managers," which is a little bit misleading because they're still managers, but I'll share more about this with you. So if you think about organizations, right now, we used to be very stable, right? With the industrial revolution, there was a lot of predictability. Things, although, you know, in the beginning of the 20th century, things changed rapidly, right? Cars were introduced within 10 years, there was a revolution there. But then it was pretty much very stable. right? People, you had these corporate jobs where people would work for the same company for decades, right? And there wasn't really a whole lot of disruption. Now, if you think of the last 20, 30 years, right, with the introduction of computers, the internet, etc., the world really has started to change a lot more. And we're finding ourselves in a much more complex environment, right? Personally, I'm really interested in companies such as Tesla or SpaceX, right, which reinvent their industries, right? Tesla is according to the stock market, is worth more than all the other automakers combined, right? Or SpaceX is able to make the travel to space so much cheaper that they become the preferred vendor for NASA, right? And the question always is like, how do companies like that manage themselves? How are they so much faster than everybody else? But guess what? I think most of you also experience this in your day-to-day business, right? It doesn't not just have to be a bigger business or a technology business. Pretty much any business these days is confronted with these changes. Notably, with this little guy, right? If you think about the last, year and a half, 2 years, since March 2020, the COVID virus has really thrown a lot of the businesses in for a loop, right? And has again highlighted how important it is to be nimble, to be agile, to be able to deal with unpredictable situations. Well, let you read this little comment here that's been attributed to Darwin. And I'm curious, if you think about being responsive to change, if you could type into the chat right now, what are your biggest challenges? I'm really curious to hear from you. So please do take a moment and put your challenges into the chat. If you have no challenges, you can type in, I have 0 challenges, which, that might be nice as well. Okay, Haley is talking about maintaining personal connection in a virtual setting. Fernando is talking about the overcoming organizational structures that mediate processes without having sufficient knowledge of the strategic view of the firm. Haley has another one, the office culture. Great. Well, and we'll revisit this. If you haven't entered any challenges yet, feel free to add those. Some of the companies I work with right now, typically what they talk about is it's hard to hire people. Supply chain issues, right? They can't get materials, or they can't get certain products that they need, certain parts. Another one is the great resignation, right? That people don't want to come back to the office. Right? I was just talking earlier this week to a lady that works for a national large insurance company. And she was sharing with me how she had to announce to the team that, they were going to require to go back to the office and everybody was going to expect it to be there. And she knows that most people don't want to do that, right? So they're really resistant, and she knows that some people are going to quit, right? But yes, to your point, Haley, the connections, having that in the virtual office, that's a big challenge that I've heard about as well. At that water cooler atmosphere, how do you keep people connected, right? Everybody's kind of on their own in their own homes. So what can we do about creating a good culture where people feel connected? So one thing that I want to propose to you, and again, this is kind of I try to take the perspective of a mid-sized family business that has maybe 50 to 100 employees, right? One thing is that if you want to be able to deal with these challenges, one thing is that it takes time, right? All of a sudden, right, you got to figure out, oh, COVID, how do we do it? What do we do with our employees? How do we protect them, right? What is our plan B? What do we do with our customers, right? How do we change what kind of technology do we need? All kinds of stuff like that. And then also, well, can we still provide the services that we provide to customers, or can we still provide the goods that customers need, right? So example, if you're a restaurant, what do? Do you just shut your doors, or do you develop another strategy? So it takes time. And then also, oftentimes it takes money, right? So the idea is what kind of investments do we need to make to actually keep our business going? And one thing to really consider also is this whole dealing with the pandemic in general. But then the other big challenge that I see is the whole digital transformation, right? A lot of our businesses are still analog, right? Probably most of us are kind of in a transition. And then some of them are very digital already, right? And if you're very digital already, you have definitely a competitive advantage over everybody else. So if it's true that you need time and you need money, right? That's typically in shortage, right? We all have only 24 hours in the day, and we typically don't have infinite amounts of money. So one thing as a family business to think about is, what assets do you have, right? And I would say probably for the most part of the family businesses, the biggest asset you have is people. People that are working in your organization. And I make here a distinction in terms of the management and the team. And why I say team and not employees, right? Because I'm trying to kind of share with you a little bit the new language of how to look at an organization. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But the first thing is about management, right? So the challenge, in my opinion, is how do you get people to have a fresh mindset, right? And I talk a little bit about the digital management, right? Not necessarily just to know how to use technology, but really think in new ways of what are opportunities out there, what are opportunities that are open to us. And in order to be able to recognize that, we need to free up the time for managers, right? And when I say managers, we talk about leadership, we talk about people that are tasked to think ahead, right? Tasked to anticipate what customers want, what customers need, how can we better serve our customers, and then also how can we take care of our people in our company, right? How can we shape their cultures? Kind of like, Haley, what you were talking about. How can I create an environment where I can have this personal connection with the team, with my employees? Or how do I shape an office culture? Or as Dr. Parr was talking about, how do I overcome organizational structures that are, maybe more hindering than supporting? So when we talk about human-centered management, right, what we typically talk about is a new role management. And I want to quickly go over this with you all. And it's not just saying black and white, oh, don't do this, don't do that, but it's like try to do more and more of that and less of the other things, right? Not everything that we do now is bad, and we just want to say what else should we be doing. And you see here the role of leaders more as coaches, right? So really you help others solve the problems, coach, facilitate, etc., and advise with people without actually making the decisions, right? So trying to push the decision making to the people where to the people that are closest to the action. I see another comment from Liz. That's difficult to find machine and material for startup companies. Yeah, right. So these supply chain issues. But once you have adopted this approach of not solving people's problems, right, you also want to foster their confidence, support them, boost their psychological safety, right? When we talk, maybe you've heard about a mindset that is entrepreneurial, that also is supportive of failures, right? If something goes wrong, well, you know, we're trying something, right? We're taking it, we're taking risks. And then also to have good communication skills, right? That's huge, right? So that when you have misunderstandings, that we have enough social skills to deal with conflict and to keep conversations going. And sometimes to challenge each other, right? To also push the boundaries a little bit and really get each other to come up with new ideas, with new thoughts, and maybe also different ways of solving problems. So the same way that we said, hey, help others solve problems, don't solve others' problems. Then stop checking on micromanaging, right? At times that's the most difficult part, is to not check and then to not intervene, right? To really resist, to step in and take over, because what happens when you do that? Typically, employees' motivation goes down, right? They might have been intrinsically motivated to work on something, manager comes in, takes over, and our goal is really to boost the intrinsic motivation. All right, I want to take a little break here and ask you guys about your feedback. What do you think about this these ideas here of new roles of management? Any thoughts, any comments? Go back here. What do you think about this idea of having a new mindset, having a digital manager's mindset?
I guess the difficulty is putting it into practice, right? Not being tempted to basically take over, and especially when you're in such a distant place, the tendency is that you want to go jump and go to that person's location and actually fix everything. So it is difficult to overcome that the locality issue, or the space and time issue that we are faced with virtual settings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it'll be there. I'm sure we can manage to keep ourselves from intervening, right?
Yeah, it's a big personal development process as well for a lot of the leaders or managers, right? Because you get into these positions because you typically you're engaged, you show high competence, right? And you're really, you know, you're come up with problems, you're a doer, right? And it's like, okay, how do we do step back management to let others come forward and step up? Yes, Dr. Tonoyan, I see you're having some contributions.
I'm not sure about having any substantial contribution, just a clarifying question, Dr. Wandeler. Could you please go back to your previous slide real quick?
Which one? The one with more the new role of management?
That juxtaposition between exactly this one, yes. New role of management. So thank you very much for your valuable insights. I really appreciate them. And I like this juxtaposition, right? Like instead of doing this, the management might want to consider doing this, adopting a different approach, you know, stop checking on employees and micromanaging employees and trusting them more and incentivizing, giving them increasing their intrinsic motivation and things of that nature. Now, I have a question because like this paradigm, right, the new role of management that you're suggesting doesn't seem entirely new to me because it depends on the firm size, right, or on the fact whether or not the company is a startup company or not. Perhaps because like even if like let's focus just on startup companies or family businesses or smaller and medium-sized companies. In these companies, to my understanding, the role of management is such that, you know, managers think about their employees being jack of all trades because, you know, smaller companies, younger companies, they do not have the resources in place, right? Everything to let their employees specialize and to micromanage their employees. Like per design, they have to assume what you refer to as the new role of management. Now, if you're talking about big, large public companies in which there is a high degree of specialization, right, among departments, and the need to control employees, I would understand your approach. Like that would resonate more strongly with me. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what is your target group, whom you're referring, or yeah.
Yes, so I think you bring up a very good point, right? Typically in startups or smaller groups of people, those roles and silos are not are much broader, right? So I think that there's a less of a problem there. But once you have, you know, groups of over 50 people, over 100 people, typically, and maybe I'll use your question to segue in the next into the next section here, because you have a great point, right? Typically, what companies do, they start creating this pyramid, right? Start creating a hierarchical pyramid, and that's because that's what we do, right? That's what we are mostly exposed to, right? We start having team leaders, we start having managers, right? Then after a while, we might have presidents and vice presidents, right? And then maybe we'll add senior vice presidents, right? And then we have assistant vice presidents and assistants, supervisors and managers and assistant managers, right? So it typically really quickly creates this pyramid of organization, and typically it's a command and control type of environment, right? Where people have positional power. And so that's kind of the scenario that I'm mostly speaking to, right? Although I think also in smaller family businesses, it can be at times a source of conflict and maybe also a source of frustration when, you know, who makes which decisions. And sometimes the families are typically the owners of the company, right? They might have certain decisions that they want to make, and then other decisions that are comfortable with delegating. And then I think it really depends on the style that the leadership has.
Thank you.
Yeah, but a great comment, and I look forward to your you know, your feedback about where we're taking this. I'm sorry, I gotta take a quick. This is typical home office interruption here by my daughter. Gianna, can you say hi real quick? Don't be shy. Show it.
Hi.
It's here. Yeah. Okay, excuse me real quick. So even the kids adapt, right? She asked me if you can have some sugar cereal, and she knows I'm not going to start an argument right now. But I want to jump in here and kind of continue, right? This was actually a situation that Ricardo was in when he took the business over from his family, right? It was a very traditional company, hierarchical. His father, this is a Brazilian company. His father was an Austrian that was fleeing the Nazis, emigrated to Brazil. He developed this manufacturing company, and he did what was common at the time, right? He started building a pyramid with managers and vice presidents and things like that. And what typically happens there is that the motivation is pretty much extrinsic, right? It's the reward punishment type of thing. In family business, a lot of times we see it's a more of a the paternalism, right? If you're good with the family, you get rewarded, and then there's all kinds of politics that go on as well. And what we're trying to suggest is not just look at how does the management need to change, but also how might the design of the organization change, right? And that's where I'm curious for you guys' comments, right? We talk about a more participative company where we try to flatten the hierarchy. There's still managers, but we look at really engaged employees that have much more decision-making rights and much more involvement. And ultimately, we'll go towards a networked organization. So there's different steps in that progress. So I'm just kind of curious, how does this resonate with you all when you hear this idea of, basically flipping the pyramid and creating a more participative culture?
For me, when I look at this, it makes it look like they're equal. So I think it helps, sometimes just seeing like a pyramid might make somebody feel lower than someone versus an equal, even though they are maybe their manager or so forth, but it just makes it feel like you can communicate more. It might, create the door for, like an open door kind of policy, if that makes sense, versus like a closed door. You might be, just simply looking at that might change your perspective.
Right, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. That's one premise, right, that we have, that we're trying to be much more equal between everybody, right, and reduce the power distance between people. So hence also the human-centered focus, right? We want to really make people feel that they're involved, they trust each other. Yeah. Other comments or questions?
I think that when you have the participative, I think that the rest of the group or the team can generate new ideas and then reach the best idea for the whole purpose to achieve a better goal in the company.
Exactly. That's one of the ways of tapping the potential, right? Tapping the assets that you have in the organization. Get the ideas of people, give them more freedom to be involved, and really leverage that. Other comments?
Dr. Wandeler, I'm wondering what you would say to individuals that fear that having too much shared governance and organization, or shared management, I would say, an organization, by flipping that pyramid, if you will, would that give more of a say to individuals that may not always have all the information to make the best decisions for the enterprise.
Okay, so you're saying that maybe people that don't have the necessary logic, information, logic could make wrong decisions, put the organization at risk?
Absolutely. I mean, we all can, right? Regardless of our ranking. But if sometimes popular decisions are not always what is the best for the organization per se.
Right.
And so how do you balance that?
Yes, that's a great question. So with great freedom comes great responsibility. And I don't know if you had heard that saying, right? The thing is really that the typical person that's involved in such an organization has also a lot more knowledge and has also more information. So I'll give you guys a little example here in a moment, but we try to share a lot of information with people so that they understand, we teach them a lot of business skills so that they understand the bigger picture of elements, right? And then when we talk about the business cases, it's also not that everybody gets to decide everything. It's much more clear and say, hey, if I'm let's say the accountant and the expert in our financial numbers, I probably have a different weight in our decision making and in our conversations than if I'm the intern.
And I guess that would apply. Oh, sorry, I interrupted. And
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. My daughter came in and left the door open. Now she's making noise. I don't know if you can hear her. I told her, come back, close the door.
No problem. So and then I interrupted anyway. So with that, in your opinion, it's are we then assigning roles? And if we get close enough to assigning roles or giving certain individuals more priority about their decisions, are we then ranking and creating hierarchies that are back in place? Or are we really able to do this? And how? I guess the question is, how do we avoid going back to that hierarchical structure by saying, well, the intern's not as important as the accountant who's a CPA, who's in charge of all this knowledge? How do we avoid restructuring the company differently and just making it hierarchical all over again?
Yes, great comments. So the idea is that now it's more a authority-based incompetence, right? Instead of having a formal hierarchy that's based on rank, right? Because the intern in an organization like this, an intern can ask questions to the CPA and really, ask, hey, explain this to me. Why are we doing this, right? Whereas in a, let's say, more typical organization, right, some of the decisions are just being made, and you're basically being informed about it, right? So let's say, for example, the insurance company I mentioned earlier, right? There's higher executives decided, here is what we're going to do. You guys are going to go back to the office, right? We send out a survey to ask your opinion, but at the end of the day, we don't really care. We're doing what we think is best, right? Versus, having this more social hierarchy based on competence, where like maybe when you choose a doctor, right, you're going to pick the doctor that you trust the most, that maybe has the most knowledge, that you feel has the most professional opinion. And if you're not quite happy with it, you might consider getting other people's opinion as well, right? So imagine it's kind of like when you think of your friends, right? If you have a car-related question, right, you think of different people to fix the car than if you have a computer issue, maybe, right? Or if you want some health advice, there's other people that come to mind again. So it's there's still a hierarchy, but it's much more fluid and much more flexible. Yes.
Dr. Wandeler, I am wondering whether if you're aware of any research studies that might have shown a link, at least, you know, an association between having female managers, top managers, and less hierarchical organizational structures. Like, in other words, is it possible that top management teams and companies led by female managers are less likely to be hierarchical and more likely to be participative in their decision making?
I'm not aware of specific research, but intuitively, I think that would be a good study to conduct. I think that it kind of goes with the you know, the stereotype of the male-dominated hierarchy versus females being typically more participative. I think what happens nowadays a lot is the women that are successful in the typical traditional organization, they typically exhibit the traits that, you know, that go along with that. But I would, yeah, intuitively, I would probably assume that women are a bit more participative. But yeah, great study. Are you guys interested in an example of what a transition like that might look like? If you're curious, right? Because you guys are asking a lot of great questions, and this is what it is, right? We are kind of like fish in water, right? That pyramid is so ingrained in us that we're really thinking, oh my gosh, how are we even going to do this in another way, right? And it's once you flip it around is when you realize, oh my gosh, there's much better ways of doing this. And one thing that I really enjoy is the Semco Style Institute has developed a business simulation. I will walk you through this, right? And it's really, how would you develop this? And this is a small family business from LA. So there's about 300 people in this company. They are a manufacturer in the aerospace industry. And they have a similar demographic that we might see here in the Central Valley, right? A lot of the employees are Latino. A lot of them are first generation immigrants, right? There is many people are bilingual. There's also many people that don't speak English that well. And there's also literacy for some people is also limited, right? Numeracy, literacy, and reading skills, right? So that you get a little bit an idea. But the people are very good in with their hands, right? So imagine this particular company does a lot of cabling for satellites and cables for rockets, right? So really high-tech stuff, but then the actual work is very manual. And some of their customers are SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, or the Blue Origin, right? That's been in the media lately. So they're doing high-tech stuff, but at the end of the day, the work that they do is really manufacturing. And here the situation was the son is taking over the company from his dad. The daughter of the dad, there's a son and a daughter. The daughter said, I don't want to do this. You're working 60 to 80 hours a week. Father, I don't want to go down the same road, right? And the son said, well, I'll take it over, but I don't want to be in the company all the time either. I want to have a life, right? So he said, you know what? I'm gonna try to spread out the managerial responsibilities of the CEO, of the owner, and get people more involved. So that's why he reached out to Semco Style and said, help me make this a more participative organization. And here's one thing that we did, I'll share with you in a moment, is we did a business simulation for people to experience the difference, right? So that was the first thing that we did. It's like a 6-hour session where people can get a little taste of what it could look like when you manage differently. Then we are doing a leadership training for managers, which is a 16-week program. And then we started redesigning the organization. And one simple way is that we start forming teams of 10, around 10. Could be 8, could be 12, right? And so these teams are becoming self-managing teams, where what we do is we start sharing numbers, KPI numbers around the company. It typically is a simplified P&L, which Dr. Parra would appreciate. And the goal here is to identify which numbers does a team member need to know so that they can get feedback about how is the company doing, right? So instead of just the top of the pyramid worrying about, how are we doing, how is our strategy working, what do we need to improve, we try to get everybody involved. So we identify numbers and then we teach the numbers. That's very important, right? There's a lot of teaching and talking about what do the numbers mean. And then gradually we implement the meeting structure, right? So Friday at the end of the week, managers meet, discuss how the week went, and they summarize that. And then Monday morning, they have a manager meeting with the team leaders, which are elected by the team, right? It's a democratic process. They share the key information with those team leaders. The team leaders in turn go with their teams of 10, share that information with them. And so they look at how did the last week work, what is coming up this week, and what are we going to try to improve, right? So you have this adaptive structure where people really try to be involved and learn about what makes the business work better and how do we communicate better. And then we gradually we introduce a lot of other things, but we don't have time to talk about all this other elements, but we develop a new culture that's really focused on the business results, but also on the employee involvement and employee happiness. So I want to share with you some impressions for some pictures of this business simulation. And here what you see is a group of employees. We have about 50 players, right? So in the morning we say, all right, we're going to create this traditional pyramid. We're going to have an executive team, in this case here was 4 people. We're going to have a middle management team, and then we're going to have a group of bottoms. And then, which are the normal employees. And then we're going to give you customer requests, right? Some people play customers, and then this organization has to create results for the customers. So for example, one customer request is, we want to build a new Disneyland, right? It's not Disneyland, but it's a competitor. You guys need to come up with a concept, and it's specifically geared towards female teenagers. So come up with a plan for that, right? And another customer might want a new product line for their business, etc. Right? So it's something real, but then it also stimulates the creativity of people. So in the very beginning, we give them a bunch of rules. So here you see the people. So this guy here, he is Aries. He ended up being a customer. This person here, Ahmed, he's a middle manager, right? So he is talking to the customer. The employees here are not allowed to customers. They're the production employees, right? So we introduce all kinds of communication rules and boundaries that are typical for a more pyramid-oriented organization. So and then we play a couple rounds, we give them feedback, right? You see here, the teams are separate. We also say, you guys are not allowed to talk to each other. You're different departments, so you're not allowed to talk. And we have 4 rounds in the morning where they play a traditional company. So between each day is 30 minutes. And after that day, we take a break and we reflect. And what we do is we talk about what's happening in the game and how does this relate to what's happening at work, right? And so typically in the morning say, oh, it's frustrating, right? The employees say, we don't know what to do because our supervisors don't tell us anything, right? The supervisors are confused. It's a zoo, right? But it kind of drives home the points of when you have limited communication between people, it slows everything down. I want to go back here. I forgot to say this. This is the top management. So they were in a special office here, and you can see here, these guys, Pedro here, he was very stressed out. So at one point in time, he was sweating because everybody was waiting in front of the office of the tops, right? And for whatever reason, he was the boss of the tops, right? So the people recreate in their minds what they know, right? And for them, it's really interesting to get a different perspective of what's going on, right? Because while they're super busy here in this top office, right? When we ask the other people here that are sitting at these tables, they say, well, the bosses, I don't know what they're doing. We never see them, right? It seems like they don't do anything. I have no idea what's going on here in this game, etc. Right? So a lot of the things that they bring up, funny enough, actually they can relate to in real life. Because they don't talk to a customer, they don't know what's going on. Every once in a while they hear something about changes, right? And what we do then after 4 days in this traditional company, we create a more circular organization, a more Semco style organization, where we have cross-functional teams with these self-management teams, where actually we have each team is cross-functional. So there is a top manager, a middle manager joins that team, and they work towards with a specific customer. And then they do 2 days that they work like that. And we reflect in between, and then it's amazing how fast they get stuff done when they work as a cross-functional team. And you see here, it's typically a great experience for the team members. And they notice how much they can get done when they have open communication and really a customer-focused organization. So let's take a quick break. What do you guys think so far? I'm curious about your feedback when you hear about this. And again, this is like a kickoff type of event, right? Where we really try to create an experiential learning experience for people, where they can see what happens in the game and how does this relate to our workplace, and what might we be able to change in our workplace. Are there any comments or thoughts or reactions to when you see this?
I think it's important to have like an office team, take on these different roles, just to see like how much communication and collaboration is important. So maybe it might help with the communication piece.
Right. It was, and typically, it's kind of random the way we assign roles, but I made sure that some of the people that are more on the top normally, right, that they are in an employee role and they have no clue what's going on, right? So they can experience that too. Hey, how do you feel when you're not really involved in all the conversations all the time? Other comments or reactions? Liz, I see your lips moving. I'm not sure if you want to make a comment or not.
Oh, I think if get together, they feel that they are part of the groups. So they may feel important too, not just because they have a lower position, they feel that there's less, but when the company include everybody, it makes them feel better.
Liz, you hit it on the nail. That's exactly the involvement, engagement. It's huge. I want to share a quick anecdote with you. This lady here, she worked in this company already for over 2 decades, right? And she works on the line. She has a manual job, right? And she does a great job at that. And she ended up being a top. So she ended up being one of the managers of this fictitious company, right? And it was beautiful. At the end of the day, she was saying, if we want our company culture to change, everyone needs to change. It starts with us. And that was, it was really impressive for me with this learning, right? To see, hey, I'm in a different position. Now I kind of, you know, I get a sense of what this can be like, and people want to be involved. That's the typical reaction.
Yeah, just to follow up with what Liz was saying too, is it allows them to step into like those leadership roles and challenge themselves. But I also think it helps, you know, their focus point, like, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? Like, who are we serving with the business? You know, whatever it may look like, whoever you are serving, I think it might help kind of center that a little bit more by working together, stepping in new roles and sharing new ideas too. So it helps the groups be innovative.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so this, right, this is the first step in a journey, right? And I want to be mindful of time and open it up for more general questions, but I want to share one thing and one tip that you might want to try with your teams. When we talk about, you know, how do you then get the people really involved? One thing that you can do, and this is also related to managing remote teams, right, is to have simple rules that unleash the freedom and accountability of people, right? And what we talk about is defining boundaries. And Dr. Parra, this kind of goes back to your earlier comment, right? You know, I could, and that's a fear that many people have. You know, now we have this organization, we give power to people, and how do we not know that they're going to screw up, right? That it's a risk, which it is. But what we do is we create these clear boundaries within which you have autonomy, right? And what we do is we talk about results, rules, behavior, and quality, right? And so we co-create these boundaries together. And I got a lot of text here, but I want to just show you this here. So results, this relates to the business, right? What are we going to do? Sales, costs, customer satisfaction, happiness, other things that might be relevant to the business, right? And already this process, right, hey, to kind of go back to your comment, defining this with the team really gets everybody thinking about what is really our purpose. I mean, what are we trying to do here, right? What is good? What does good look like? What does great look like? Or how do we know that we're not doing a good job? Right? Along the lines is quality standards, right? What minimum quality do we have? And then really important in a lot of businesses, or probably all of them, is the law and regulations. So for example, in this particular business, in the aerospace industry, right? And imagine your parts go into a satellite or into a rocket, there's a lot of regulations of what they have to do, right? So that's really important that there's no shortcuts there. And then a more cultural aspect is the behavior values, right? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? What are our values? And so that is a really powerful dynamic, because now the group creates this together, and they are going to be the ones holding each other to those norms and agreements that they created, right? Now we're going away from employees complaining to each other and then going to the supervisor, hey, so-and-so did this and that, help me out, right? Supervisor goes to manager, or they get HR involved. I mean, there's still HR, but we try to get the people to really self-regulate, which also needs to be learned, right? Which we need to teach people and to have soft skills to do this. But now, all the managerial role that's involved with lower, in a sense, lower value stuff, right? Managing people in conflict and dealing with that falls away, right? And now managers can really focus on whatever they are best suited to address, right? Future business, the sales, innovation, you know, figuring out the problems, or addressing deals like COVID, right? To really have some wiggle room and be able to be more proactive and not just always reactive. Okay, I'm going to show you, guys, a quick example, and then this is I'm going to open up the question again. Here is an example of a client from actually from a Dutch bank, from a bank from Holland, right? And again, this is we want to be clear on what we want as a business, right? This could be the CEO or a management team. I'd say, hey, this is what we're shooting for. And maybe we're doing this, either we say what it is or we co-create it, right? We get to an agreement. And then, for example, these guys said, what are the customers or commercials KPIs? What are the key performance indicators? What are the numbers that we're looking at, right? We want to make sure we have a warm welcome in Dubai. We want to fix something the first time we hear a problem. So for example, what these guys introduced is you had $1,000 authority of a budget, right? If somebody comes in and needs something, anything to fix the problem right away, right? Oh, I got to talk to my manager type of stuff, right? Right away, take care of the business, do whatever makes the customer happy. Then they had some performance measures related to the banking business, like the interest rates that they would use and things like that. And then one thing was also try to be digital whenever possible, right? And so here you see a link back to a strategy, right? And now it's not just the top managers thinking about that stuff. You actually have all the teams thinking about, hey, if we can, let's figure out how to do it digital, right? So now you get everybody involved in thinking about that. Then here is just more basic stuff, right? We meet requirements on first aid, client tracking, client filing, training requirements, right? So here you kind of see them interacting with the bigger pyramid, right? This is all stuff that they have to do from the corporate, right? So say, all right, this is the stuff we need to do, we do it, right? And then we have an agreement of how do we close. They started doing flexible schedules, right? They said, hey, we agreed that we have a minimum opening time, but if you guys notice that on Monday morning between 8 and 10, nobody ever shows up, well, if we want to close the location, let's close it, right? And maybe let's say the Clovis branch might be closed from 8 to 10, but downtown Fresno, they are, everybody is there at 8 to 10, they'll be open, right? So you give wiggle room to the teams. And then again, in the middle here, they have the flexibility, right? You say, hey, there's a minimum opening, and then they decide when do they exactly want to open, right? This is just a little bit of an idea of what this can look like. Okay, what do you guys think about this co-creating boundaries to increase the autonomy of teams, right? Because it's self-management, but at the same time provide guidance of what's the true north, which direction are we headed, what are we trying to achieve? Any comments or reflection on that?
Dr. Wandeler, yes. So I've been getting a lot of questions as to when is this recording going to be released. There were a few of our attendees that were not present at the beginning, and some that had to leave right at the top of the hour. And my question is, will we have time, about 5 minutes, to talk about how you'll be providing this type of development over a course of the whole semester in a few moments?
Yes, so I want to really share this with you guys. So we have a 16-week leadership program that we offer for leaders. And Dr. Parr, you and I have talked about it, and I want to make sure that we offer this to the members of the Family Business Institute. If you think, hey, what I've heard today about more democratic management, more self-managed teams, human-centered management, and this piqued your interest, we want to serve you guys and offer an opportunity for 2 scholarships to participate in this program. The goal is for leaders that want to make a change, that you get more information in the training, And then we also provide coaching to you. So the goal is to work on a little pilot or on a big project. It depends on what your possibilities are, but that we can get some traction and show also other family business what might be possible here in the Central Valley.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that kind overture and for your support of our Institute's members, Dr. Wandeler. I appreciate that. And if you are interested in participating or being considered for the scholarship, just send me a quick email, or what I can do is after this session's over, I'll send you like a mini application form with a couple of questions just to make sure you have sufficient interest to propose. Absolutely, Haley. Thank you. Let me yield back the floor. My apologies.
And yes, so if you're interested, please get in touch with Dr. Parra. Right, we'll look at what who is interested and what the opportunities are for you to really actually make a change. There can be leaders and change agents at any level of an organization. Right. Typically, it's best if you're the closer to the traditional top, right, or the center of power, the better, right? Because what we really want to make sure is that the CEO or the owner support this initiative so that it has legs, right, that it can spread. And there is some other things that you're going to learn, or actually there's a lot of other things that you're going to learn. For example, I'm just going to throw one out there. What would you say if you allowed employees to set their own salaries? Right? But not just say, hey, I want to make $1 million, right? You say, hey, look, here is what typically a person that does your job, this is typically what they make. Then this is what they make in our company. And now you decide, hey, what do you think you should make, right? So, and here is how we're doing as a business, right? If we're doing fantastic, you might have more wiggle room, right? If we're struggling right now, if you want to raise, it's a little bit more difficult, right? So we're basically putting the decision-making that owners or managers typically have to make. We're also trying to move this towards the self-managing teams. But, that's the more advanced stuff that we talk about. That's a few years down the road when people are really comfortable with being involved in the business and making more decisions. So real quick, I want to open it up for questions, but just a summary, right? If you talk to somebody over dinner and you tell them what have you learned in this webinar, what I hope that you come away with is that to deal with the future, right? I think a lot of family business, particularly small ones, think about leveraging the assets that you have, which are your people. But how can you do this? One is you got to free up the time of your leaders, right? And again, leader could be at any level of the organization. But particularly the top managers or top leaders, if they have less people management type of stuff that's more lower value added, then that's better. It frees them up to focus on the business. But at the same time, they also change a mindset from being more of a coach, of a facilitator, versus solving everybody else's problems, right? We want to get everybody involved in problem solving, hence creating those teams of 10 and tapping into the potential of teams so that they can be involved and get their ideas out and help you ultimately thrive in this ever-changing world. So thank you very much for attending today. If we have a little more time, I'd be happy to answer questions or hear more comments. I'm curious, how this resonates, if anything of that is useful to you, if you can take it with you and do something with it. And if you are interested in, again, in the participating in our leadership program, please drop a note to Dr. Parra. And if you are interested in learning more about the Institute, feel free to email me directly at christian@semco.us or connect on LinkedIn. Be happy to connect. We have a website for the like page for the Institute where we keep posting different forms of information. On the website, www.semcostel.us, we have also more resources, and you also can sign up for our newsletter to get regular information.
Excuse me if this has already been asked, but if not, will you be sharing these slides with us after this session?
Yes, I will share them with Dr. Parra, and then he will update it. And what I also will add is an ebook about the post-COVID organization. And there you have a little bit more details as well about different things you can do with, particularly with remote work.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. And I'll also transform the video so we can post it. This is right now going on live, a live link to YouTube. And so I'm assuming that that should be available immediately after, as soon as I stop the